Hello, patron, and welcome back to my life. It's Writer Wednesday, where I give you my tips and advice on the art and the business of writing, and tell you how I do what I do as an indie author. So today I want to talk about mistakes, which we all make as authors, and how to survive them and move on with your career. Though I do want to stress as the first point that this is not a get-out-of-jail-free card when it comes to making mistakes. You should not be trying to screw up. You should try your hardest, you should do the best you can. It's just that mistakes are inevitable in our lives. We are human. Things happen. So what kind of mistakes are we talking about here? Well, there's obvious, logistical, clerical errors, and I've made a few of those over the years. Longtime patrons will remember that I once published an edition of Nightblade that had my outline notes still inside it. I outline my books in very loose, very modern, very out-of-character language, complete with profanity and inappropriate references and inside jokes. Then, when I write my first draft, I write my first draft right above the outline so I can easily refer back to it, and they're both in the same document. Then when I finish the first draft, I delete the outline, so obviously it's not in the published book that goes to the reader. Well, one time I published Nightblade with the outline notes still in the book, so the reader got to read a summarized version of what they just read, complete with some very not okay language. That is the worst clerical mistake I have ever made, and there have not been too many others even slightly like it, but things like that will happen every once in a while. There's also more high-level, bigger concept mistakes, like when it was pointed out to me that I originally wrote my Underrealm books from a very white perspective because I only described someone's skin color if they weren't white. But in none of these cases, and I hope this remains the case in the future, did I face some huge backlash where people were talking about how awful I was and saying they'd never read my books again and complaining about me to other people. And that is because I work very hard to establish myself as a person with my reader, to let them know I am a human being. I first noticed this with John and Hank Green, aka the Vlogbrothers, the first year that I went to VidCon, which is an annual big YouTube convention that I go to every year. So when some YouTubers, really popular ones, showed their faces in public, they would be mobbed by fans who would come running and screaming and trying to touch them and not talking at all. But John and Hank's fans were much more respectful. They would say hello, they would ask if they could take a selfie or say hi or shake their hand or something like that. It was very calm and measured and respectful. Because one of the whole points of John and Hank's channel is they, like everyone else, are people. They are humans with feelings and lives, and because of that, their fans have that idea instilled in their heads, and so they just treat people better. On the other side of the coin, it is a truism in publishing, both indie and traditional publishing, that every time you get a BookBub, there is a dark side to it, and that is that you will get a whole influx of very negative reviews. That is because a whole bunch of people discover your book for the first time, but they are people who have never heard of you before. To them, you are not a person. You don't have a face or a voice. You are just a name on a book cover. Because they don't have a concept in their heads that you are human, if there is anything in your book that they don't like, anything at all, they will criticize you much more harshly than they would otherwise. So there's celebrities out there, right, who do some problematic stuff that I'm not a huge fan of, and you might be the same. But if you know that they have donated half of all the millions they've earned over the years to child cancer research, you're probably a lot less likely to go lambaste them on social media. And even if you do criticize something that they do, you're likely to add a caveat. I don't want to denigrate the good work that this person has done, but it all comes down to making yourself as complete of a person in your audience's mind as you can, so that they understand that even when you screw up, that is not all there is to you. And this is one reason that I kind of put myself out on the internet so much. There's the YouTube channel, the public videos, it's hours of streaming every day, dozens of hours a week. People can hang out with me a super lot if they want to, and rather than just be there, I try to express myself and explain myself and say what I'm doing and why. That way my readers or anybody else who wants to find out can see what it is I'm doing and what I'm trying to do, which makes me more of a person. And when I do inevitably screw up, I can own up to it, I can explain what happened, I can explain maybe the reasons for why it happened, and they have seen that that screw up is not all that there is of me. Now there's a very big caveat to all of this, and that is that you cannot just be a person, you need to do your best to be a good person. If the majority of your communication to your audience is just you apologizing over and over again for the same mistakes, if you don't learn from mistakes and you keep doing screwed up things, then you don't, it's not good enough to just be a person, because you're just kind of terrible in that case. And think about this. If there's some celebrity, like maybe an actor who you don't like because of something that they've done, if the only communication you've ever seen from them as a person, not them playing a role, if the only communication that you've ever seen is them defending something, you know, not so great that they did, or even if the only communication you've ever seen is apologizing, you've only seen them in one framework. If you've never seen them do press junkets or tell a funny story about a thing that their kid did one time, or seen them present at a big charity dinner that raised a lot of money to help the less fortunate, you only have one frame of reference for them, and therefore your opinion of them is kind of all, well, framed by that frame of reference. And all of this kind of ties back to the first point, that this is not an excuse to go and make lots of mistakes. You can't expect to keep making mistakes or to make any mistakes at all and have people stick around. Nobody owes you their attention. Nobody owes you their business or their money. And I also recognize fully that putting yourself out there the way that I do is not an option for everybody. Social anxiety is a legitimate thing, and also some people just don't want their lives to be that public, and that is completely fine. But I strongly encourage you to find some way, any way, to communicate with your audience and reinforce the fact that you are a human being on the other end of your keyboard. It will help you in the long run, and honestly, it will help your audience not to expect something different. And that is it for this week's Writer Wednesday. If there's anything you would like me to talk about, a subject you'd like me to discuss, or a question you'd like me to answer, drop it in the comments. There's nothing on the docket right now, so your question could be the very next thing I talk about. Not the next thing, because I have another backlog video that I have to make. But you get the idea. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, as always, for your incredible support, and I will see you next Wednesday. Bye!